Hello and welcome to this week's Confirmation to Go. We looked at the 9th commandment already, and now we are ready to look at the 10th, also about coveting, but this time about living things. Mostly people, but it also does include some animals. So let's walk through this. Of course, a very long commandment, and that will hang us up a little bit, but we'll work through it. So, you shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his manservant or maidservant, his ox or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. What does this mean? We should fear and love God so that we do not entice or force away our neighbor's wife, workers, or animals, or turn them against him, but urge them to stay and do their duty. All right. This is really the first one where I've had to break the commandment up. And you shall not covet your neighbor's wife, and then, or his manservant or maidservant. That's a clear thought together. His ox or donkey. That's another clear thought to that. Or anything that belongs to your neighbor, right? This is kind of a catch-all here, but we're going to stay very focused on the relationship aspect of it. All right, what does this mean? Well, we should fear and love God. Hey, there's our first commandment, right? We stay connected to it all the way through. And then we get our negative and our positive. And again, we have a very long negative and a much shorter positive. So that we do not, two things, entice or force away. And we'll talk about those down below, but those two things are very important. Our neighbor's wife, right? Workers or animals. And just make the connection, right? We're just restating in simpler terms these three things, right? Here's the wife, here's the workers, here's the animals, right? Or, and this is the third thing, right? So we've got one, we've got two, and now we have three. Or turn them against him, but urge them to stay and do their duty. And so we have one thing to do, urge, but we urge them to do two things, stay and do their duty. All right, this is a little bit longer, but again, if you keep working through it, I think you'll be fine. All right. Well, what is a wife? Of course, this is a spouse. And really, it does include husbands as well. This is a thing that is you just see in Scripture, and in most languages is we tend to use one gender or another as catch-all terms. Manservant, maidservant, anyone, I would say, under your authority. Right? Usually workers, but it could be servants. It could be you have a special kind of authority like the police or something, right? And we have to be as equally respectful of that. Those are very limited engagements, right? A police officer's authority over me should be limited. But we need to be mindful of those things. And mostly we're talking about workers here, which is exactly what it says up here. Right, so you certainly understand it that way. And then ox or donkeys. And of course, this is animals, but notice that these are what we would call beasts of burden. These specific animals work as well. And I don't think that means that we're necessarily excluding like dogs and cats or pets or anything up here. But the focus really is on those things that are necessary to maintain a house and to create an inheritance. And so I kind of think about it that way. I need my wife and my husband to have the kids, to have the inheritance. And of course, we're partners in this together. And then workers help to tend to the land and make it even more productive. And certainly the ox and the donkey plowing the field and carrying the goods to the market, things like that. Well, what are we not supposed to do? We're not supposed to entice. I think this is very interesting here. And the way I would ask us to understand that is as carrot, and then just right down here, put stick, right? So carrot is, you're luring. Right? Whereas force away, you're forcing, right? And we know how that works, right? You could be like, "Oh, come over to me. It's more fun, come enjoy everything over here." Whereas the stick is, if you don't do it, bad stuff's going to happen to you. And we're not supposed to do either of those things. We're supposed to be okay with the situation. Now, again, this doesn't mean that we can't like offer better wages or something, but we we have to understand our own heart. And if we're offering better wages to harm another person, that's not a good thing. If we're offering better wages, it's because we think it's the right thing to do, and we hope that it doesn't actually hurt the other person. That's okay. And there's tough ways to help slice that up, but we don't make excuses for ourselves. We always tell the truth of what our heart is. All right, but then I didn't include this, but turn them against him, right? Make them hate him, right? They may stay. You haven't enticed them or forced them away, but you just make them hate him, even though they're still there, right? Just shaking their fist at them. Don't do that either. But urge them to stay. And this is really important. It's not a neutral. We don't have a neutral stance towards this. It is strongly insist. Right? It's like, this is important because these are the relationships that you have. Again, it isn't to say that a worker can't go and find better employment, but certainly we don't want to lure away the animals that they own and say, like, oh, they're mine now, right? I've got better dog food over here, so here comes your dog and belongs to me. No, that would be silly. We want to strongly insist that those things that are properly that person's, connected to them, stay connected to them, at least as much as we can have control over it. And then duty, and this is live up to responsibilities. Right? Don't, if you're a worker, don't be shiftless or lazy. Responsibility. I've got to double check myself here, right? There you go. Sometimes you get busy talking, you lose track of all your S's in there. All right, so live up to responsibility. And so the thing we're talking about here, and this is an important concept in vocation, right? We have roles and how we have these relationships with each other. Vocation is just how we live out our relationships the way God tells us to. Right? And I shouldn't beat my animals or my workers or my wife, because I have a vocation and responsibility to them too. But they have this vocational responsibility, and those roles are defined in Scripture. And this invites us to look at in the Catechism, the table of duties. This will come up in other places, but I invite you to look at it now. The table of duties in your Catechism really does give Bible verses that simply help define what we're supposed to do in these different roles. And I hope you find that helpful. All right. Well, we're done with the commandments. The close of the commandments is still left, and we'll take some time on that. Again, very long, so please do start looking at it now. But until then, take care, God bless, and have a wonderful week.